Landscape photography is all about capturing the beauty of nature and the scenes around us, whether it's the vast mountain ranges or a flowing river surrounded by snow. Is the Canon EOS R5 II the perfect tool for the job? With its 45 megapixel sensor, low noise ratio, in-camera upscaling, advanced stabilization, and more that can take our landscape images to the next level? I think it just might be. Matt Seffi with B&H here, and today we'll cover how the R5 II performs in landscape photography, and I'll also share some landscape tips along the way, from compositional techniques, ways to maximize sharpness and detail, experimenting with unique angles, and how to get the most out of the R5 II's features for landscapes. So let's get going. Much of landscape photography comes down to lighting conditions and composition. A well-composed landscape photo guides the viewer's eyes and creates a sense of depth, and the lighting or weather conditions can add quite a bit of drama and emotion into your landscapes. Now, sadly, we can't control the lighting or the weather conditions, but we can wake up early for sunrise or stay out late for sunset and try our luck there. Regardless of the conditions, it's usually still worth going out, as you never know how the day will shape up, especially here in Yellowstone, where we're getting what feels like multiple different climates throughout the entire day. So first things first, I'm out to mimic one of the landscape images I took in Yellowstone last summer, as I thought it would be cool to compare the same spot now that it's covered in snow. The R5 II has a built-in focus bracketing function, which really comes in handy for landscapes. Even when factoring in hyperfocal distance and shooting with a small aperture, some landscape scenes require more depth of field than a single shot can provide, or to maximize sharpness overall. Focus bracketing allows you to capture multiple images at different focus points, and this can later be merged into one fully tack-sharp image. And the camera does all the work here once you specify the amount of shots you want it to take and how big or small you'd like for each focus shift to be. Now, these can be composited later in Canon EOS software or in programs like Adobe Photoshop. All right, so I'm in Lamar Valley, just above the Lamar River, and right now the lighting is absolutely perfect, and I'm experimenting a little bit with the leading lines here leading to the mountains in the distance and this incredible sunset that we're about to see here. And I'm using the HDR PQ shooting on here to expand the dynamic range, because right now it's a high contrast scene, so I'm using the HDR mode to expand the dynamic range of the camera essentially, and I'll be able to take that into post and get even more information out of one shot. So for my settings, I'm at around f8 aperture to get the deepest depth of field possible, and f8 is really the sharpest point of this lens. I'm using the 15-35 f2.8 Canon lens here, and for my shutter speed, I'm around 1/80th of a second to kind of slow down the water a little bit, but not so much that it looks silky smooth. For my filter, I have a CPL and an ND filter, 6 stops of ND to cut out some of the unwanted light, and the CPL to cut out some of those unwanted reflections and bring out the vividness of the sky. So let's see what we can get. One of the biggest mistakes in landscape photography is always shooting at eye level. We kind of default to that, but changing perspectives can really transform an image. The R5 II's flippy screen, as I like to call it, helps with those low or high angles, making it easier to find unique perspectives without uncomfortable shooting positions, which is great because then I don't have to lie down in the snow. Although honestly, I'll probably end up doing that anyways. Low-angle shots can make foreground elements feel more dramatic, and high-angle perspectives add a grand sense of scale. Also, using a wide-angle lens up close to foreground elements make them appear larger and much more immersive. And don't be afraid to whip out the telephoto zooms for landscapes as well. Great focal lengths add a level of compression that wide angles just don't have. This makes backgrounds look more grand, and that ability to zoom in great distances lets you hone in on a variety of landscapes that would otherwise be inaccessible. Using a telephoto zoom kind of feels like I can pull multiple landscapes out of one single composition. So for this landscape, we've got an iconic shot right in front of us with an incredible landscape in the background and a bison in our foreground. But the only issue is dipping into the evening hours here, it's getting a little bit dark. So that means I don't want to shoot at f8 or even f11 where I would get a deeper depth of field. I actually have to lower to around 2.8 to let more light in. That way I don't have to crank my ISO too high. And I also want to have my shutter speed really pretty high here. The reason is because I'm doing a focus bracket of this bison. Because the bison is so far from the background, to get the entire scene in focus, you really have to do a focus bracket and merge that later in post-processing. So having a high shutter speed means that I can hand-hold this focus bracket and have it be no problem in merging it in post-processing. So let's see what we can get here. Long exposure photography is a great way to capture motion in landscapes, like capturing those silky smooth waterfalls and rivers. With stabilization turned off, ensures the best results, but it is impressive how long of an exposure you can achieve just by going handheld. If you're shooting in bright conditions, especially when there's a lot of snow on the ground, using an ND filter allows for longer shutter speeds without overexposing the image. It's kind of like having sunglasses for your camera. So for this scene, I'm actually taking 3 different exposures, 1 stop apart for each exposure, 1 underexposed, 1 overexposed, and 1 at a proper exposure. Basically, I'm using the auto exposure bracketing to get the entire scene. It's a very high dynamic scene with the backlighting. It's nice and soft with the backlighting behind the clouds, but because of it, it's casting some shadows with the trees here. And it's pretty bright right now. So I think that having 3 separate exposures and blending this in post will be a good way to get a nice high dynamic range scene here. It just looks absolutely beautiful. The R5 II introduced AI-powered in-camera upscaling, allowing you to increase resolution all in camera. This works by doubling the pixels horizontally and vertically, giving you a whopping 179 megapixel photo to work with, whether you want to crop in post and reframe, or if you want to get multiple compositions out of a single shot. This also means printing at large scale, and a 45 megapixel native resolution is already enough to print, but it's nice to have that in camera without the need for additional post-processing steps. Speaking of, you can also perform in-camera crops and save them as a separate file, which is another way of pulling multiple landscapes from one single composition. So in the age of social media, I'm sure you've seen those awesome seamless carousels online, and these are a fun way to tie your landscapes together and tell a cohesive story. It's kind of like a modern day photo book. And to do this, I prefer to jump into Photoshop, and since 4x5 rules social media, I made a canvas that's 1080 by 1350. Depending how many slides I want this carousel to be, I multiply the width, which is 1080, by that number. So for example, if I'm gonna do 5 slides, I multiply 1080 by 5, and that gives me my 5400 pixels for the width. Then I add a guide layout to help in framing. So I go to View, New Guide Layout, and set it to 4 columns, and make sure the gutter and margins are completely off. And then I click OK. Then I can start building out my slides, and we are in Yellowstone, so I'm definitely gonna incorporate some wildlife here to tell the entire story as well. There's a ton of creative ways you can take this, and you could also incorporate some scanned in elements and make it more scrapbook-like as well. But from there, then I just select the Slice tool, click Slice from Guides, and then File, Export, Save for Web, select JPEG, and set the quality to the highest. Then save, and I'll save these slides separately, and this is the result. It's a lot of fun to see how your landscapes pull together as one big panoramic story. And on an individual photo level, I've been so stoked over the images out of the Canon R5 II. It really is packed with features that elevate landscape photography, from in-camera upscaling and focus bracketing to powerful stabilization for long exposures. At the end of the day, great landscapes are a combination of so many different elements coming together. So having the right tool to bring that to life really makes all the difference. Let me know in the comments, what's your favorite technique for landscape photos, or where are you headed next for your landscape photography? We would love to see it in the comments down below. My name is Matt, and thanks for watching.